down the aging process itself. This edible and medicinal tree I'm talking about is known as the moringa. And to make this lost remedy, you first need to gather some of its leaves, and then sprinkle a few tablespoons of baking soda in a water-filled basin. Next, dip the moringa leaves you've gathered in the water and wash them thoroughly. And after that, all you need to do is hang them upside down to dry, and make sure they don't get any direct sunlight. After about 4 days, separate the moringa leaves from the stalks and grind them for about 30 seconds. This is the powder you're going to get. It'll last a lifetime as long as you can keep the bugs out. I place it in jars near my food stockpiles, but I use it regularly for energy and focus, or whenever I need a painkiller or an anti-inflammatory. 150 years ago, this was common knowledge throughout America. Even little kids knew about it. But as time passed, and we've become more and more disconnected from nature and increasingly dependent on synthetic drugs, it was lost. We no longer know how to heal ourselves naturally, the way God intended. I would never have found out about the moringa tree were it not for this old book my grandfather left me after he passed away. He was one of America's most gifted healers and personally responsible for helping thousands of people over his 40 years of practicing natural medicine. His Lost Book of Remedies contains all the healing plants of North America and the exact time-tested recipes to turn them into powerful tinctures, extracts, and poultices. Today, I'm going to share with you this lost knowledge of medicinal plants and remedies. I'm talking about common plants that may be growing in your backyard right now that can replace modern antibiotics, weeds you step on every day that can numb your pain like morphine, and plants that can stop your bleeding in just minutes, even plants that work better than most modern drugs to reverse joint damage from arthritis, lower your cholesterol, stabilize your blood sugar levels, and might even prevent cancer from developing in your body. So, who am I and why should you believe every word I say? Well, I'm Claude Davis, and you may know me from my best-selling book, The Lost Ways. More than 200,000 American patriots are relying on it for the wisdom of our forefathers to thrive even in the darkest hours. Or like millions of others, you may have read my articles on askaprepper.com. But even though my books and articles are so popular, I never wanted to be famous. In fact, I tend to shy out of the public eye. This allows me to focus on my passion for unearthing the wisdom of the elders. You see, while people tend to be obsessed with everything new, with technology and smartphones and social media and cars that drive themselves, I was always intrigued by what I think was a happier, wiser, and even healthier America. A country of more independent people who had jobs and could care for their families, who took responsibilities and who were proud of being American, of building things, and of being number one. Progress brought us so many good things, but in many ways, things used to be much better. We're smarter, but we're not wiser. We own more stuff, but stuff we don't really need. And we live longer lives tied to medical equipment, but that doesn't mean we're healthier. Now, being the investigative driving force behind Ask a Prepper really drove this point home for me. My readers are just as fascinated with natural remedies that work either in a crisis or just for everyday health problems. And over time, I've seen it all. Thousands of lost remedies, what works and what doesn't. True miracles, as well as bogus cures that had no effect. And I had to sift through mountains of information. And I don't think I could have done it without the help of my late grandpa. This is a true American story that stretches over 100 years and 3 generations of my family. It's something I've given a lot of thought to about sharing or not, as what I'm about to reveal is deeply personal. And I only do it because this information will end up saving many American lives, and it could save yours as well. My great-grandpa was a Ukrainian priest on a mission. He wanted his ministry among Native Americans. And so it happened that my grandpa went from being fresh off the boat to playing real cowboys and Indians at the age of 7. It's there where he learnt his first medicinal plants. As he grew up, he became the right hand of the medicine man in the village, and he'd gather medicinal plants and turn them into powerful remedies, like the joint pain ointment Gray Dakota. Now, if you're one of the lucky few who've tried it, you know what I'm talking about. And if you haven't had this opportunity yet and you're experiencing joint pain every now and then you're in luck. because in a few minutes I'll show you how you can make this lost remedy at home and use it whenever you're in need. From the medicine man, he also learned how to make his famous sand tea that brought people with kidney problems and later diabetes from all over the country to his doorstep, and it's also here where he discovered what is probably the only remedy for swollen feet. But that was just the beginning for Gramps. Grandpa's thirst for herbal cures couldn't be quenched easily, and he didn't stop at Native American remedies. So he went on his own mission. It was a mission to discover all the natural healers, the witch doctors, the old women with a knack for performing health miracles. And over the years, he tested these lost remedies on himself, on people, but most of all, during World War II. My grandfather was a pacifist, but he was also a patriot. He enlisted in the army not to kill, but to save as many lives as possible. If you'd been on the muddy battlefield of Petier, you would have seen 600 brave American soldiers carrying their backpacks and one who was carrying two. And that was my grandfather, who brought his remedies with him. They converted a deserted French church into a makeshift hospital. By nightfall, it was all full of hundreds of wounded young Americans. And when the surgeons ran out of morphine, it was my grandfather who gave them relief. He had with him a powerful pain-killing extract made from this plant. Now, I'm sure you've seen it in your backyard, too. And just like my grandfather taught me, I'll show you today how to make it so you never have to worry about running out of painkillers. My grandfather would rush from soldier to soldier and bring a small vial of the extract to their lips. And in minutes, the loud groans and cries would subside to the amazement of all the army surgeons who had not seen anything like it before. He wasn't a medic, but after seeing how well his remedies worked, they let him do his job. With mortar shells and shrapnel flying all around him, he would plunge himself into the midst of battle and pull men to safety, stop their bleeding, disinfect their wounds, and ease their pain. And by the end of the war, every man in the 8th Infantry Division knew him as Dr. Davis. And since then, that's what people called him. Now, back home here in America, my grandfather never did get a medal for all of his efforts, although he probably saved just as many lives as the surgeons that he worked with in the fields of Normandy. But in the 60s, people from all over the country came seeking my grandfather. Our small farm was filled with the sick from dusk to dawn, and his supply of herbs was barely able to keep up. When I was a boy back in the 80s, he'd send me out to harvest the many types of plants and weeds that he needed for his medicines. And it was one of my favorite activities. He just gave me a simple journal that held drawings and descriptions for every medicinal plant you can imagine. It became my grandfather's lifelong dream to gather all the natural cures and remedies spread all over America. His plant journal he always kept by his side grew larger and larger. He began calling it the Book of Old Remedies. And when my grandfather left this world, more than 5,000 people from all over the world came to his funeral. Our small town of Springfield didn't have enough hotels to accommodate them, so everybody offered a place to stay. And while I didn't know most of them, they all knew my grandfather. And you know my grandfather too. You know him because you know his generation, the greatest generation. And maybe it was your father's or your grandfather's. If you knew one of them, you knew all of them. It was a generation shaped by hardships and turmoil that others after them would never face again. It was a generation that had to mature fast in order to survive the Great Depression and then fight in World War II. And they were willing to serve and sacrifice for the greater good. You could make a movie out of my grandfather's life.